The backwards law. Why happiness is ruining your life. In the labyrinth of human existence, we often find ourselves caught in a peculiar paradox. The more desperately we chase happiness, the more elusive it becomes. This phenomenon, known as the backwards law, challenges our fundamental understanding of well-being and forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our relentless pursuit of happiness might be the very thing sabotaging our chances of attaining it. As we embark on this exploration, I invite you to pause and reflect on your own relationship with happiness. How often do you find yourself thinking, "I'll be happy when I get that promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I achieve this goal or that milestone"? We've been conditioned to view happiness as a destination, a reward waiting for us at the end of a long and arduous journey. But what if this very mindset is the root of our discontent? The backwards law, a concept popularized by Alan Watts, suggests that the more we try to grasp something, the more it slips through our fingers. It's like trying to relax by tensing all your muscles. The very act of trying creates the opposite effect of what we desire. In the context of happiness, our fervent attempts to be happy often lead to anxiety, frustration, and a pervasive sense of lack. Consider for a moment the last time you were truly, deeply happy. Chances are, it wasn't when you were actively trying to be happy. It was likely a moment when you were fully immersed in an experience, when you forgot yourself and your desires, and simply existed in the present. This is the crux of the backwards law. Happiness often comes as a byproduct of engagement with life, rather than as the result of a direct pursuit. But why does this paradox exist? To understand this, we must delve into the nature of human consciousness and our relationship with desire. Our minds are constantly oscillating between two states, wanting and having. When we don't have something, we want it. When we have it, we either take it for granted or start wanting something else. This perpetual cycle of desire and satisfaction, or dissatisfaction, keeps us in a state of chronic discontent. Moreover, our culture's obsession with positivity and the pressure to be happy all the time creates an additional layer of stress. We not only feel bad when we're not happy, but we also feel bad about feeling bad. This meta layer of negative emotion compounds our suffering and pushes genuine happiness further out of reach. So, what's the solution? If trying to be happy makes us unhappy, should we strive for misery instead? Of course not. The answer lies in a subtle shift of perspective and approach. Firstly, we need to reframe our understanding of happiness. Instead of viewing it as a constant state to be achieved, we can see it as fleeting moments to be appreciated when they arise. This shift allows us to release the pressure of trying to maintain a perpetual state of joy and instead opens us up to the full spectrum of human experience. Secondly, we must learn to embrace negative emotions as part of the human experience. Sadness, anger, fear, these are not obstacles to happiness, but essential components of a rich and meaningful life. By allowing ourselves to feel these emotions without judgment, we paradoxically create more space for positive experiences. But here's where it gets truly interesting. The backwards law doesn't just apply to happiness. It permeates many aspects of our lives. Think about sleep, for instance. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more elusive it becomes. Or consider confidence. The more you try to appear confident, the more self-conscious and awkward you often become. This brings us to a profound question. How much of your life are you spending in this state of trying? Trying to be happy, trying to be successful, trying to be loved? And how is this constant state of effort affecting your well-being? The backwards law invites us to consider a radical alternative. What if, instead of trying so hard, we simply allowed life to unfold? What if, instead of chasing happiness, we focused on living authentically and engaging fully with our experiences? This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on our goals. Rather, it's about shifting our focus from the outcome to the process, from the future to the present. It's about finding joy in the journey rather than postponing happiness to some future achievement. As we conclude this first part of our exploration, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Where are you caught in the trap of trying too hard? How might you apply the wisdom of the backwards law to create more space for genuine well-being? Remember, the path to happiness may not be a straight line forward, but a paradoxical step back into the present moment. The alchemy of acceptance, transmuting resistance into resilience. As we delve deeper into the paradoxical nature of happiness and the backwards law, we find ourselves at the crossroads of acceptance and change. This intersection is where true transformation occurs, not through force or relentless pursuit, but through a profound shift in our relationship with reality itself. Consider for a moment the energy we expend resisting what is. How often do we find ourselves pushing against the current of life, struggling against circumstances we cannot change? This resistance, born from our desire for things to be different than they are, is often the very source of our suffering. The backwards law reveals to us a startling truth. The more we resist reality, the more power we give to the very things we're trying to avoid. But what if we could alchemize this resistance into acceptance? What if, instead of fighting against the tide, we learned to flow with it? This is not about passive resignation, but about active engagement with life on its own terms. It's about recognizing that our power lies not in controlling external circumstances, but in shaping our response to them. Imagine for a moment that you're caught in a riptide. The natural instinct is to swim against the current, to fight with all your might to reach the shore. But experienced swimmers know that this approach only leads to exhaustion and increases the danger. Instead, the wisest course of action is to swim parallel to the shore, to work with the current rather than against it. This same principle applies to our emotional and psychological lives. When we resist our emotions, when we try to force ourselves to be happy or push away negative feelings, we create internal tension and conflict. This struggle not only fails to bring us the happiness we seek, but often amplifies our distress. The backwards law teaches us that the path to well-being lies not in resistance, but in acceptance. But let's be clear, acceptance is not the same as resignation or passivity. It's not about giving up or settling for less. Rather, it's about acknowledging reality as it is, without judgment or resistance. It's about creating a space of clarity from which effective action can arise. Think about a time when you were able to accept a difficult situation fully. Perhaps it was a personal loss, a professional setback, or a challenging relationship. In that moment of acceptance, did you not feel a sense of release, a freeing up of energy that was previously consumed by resistance? This is the paradoxical power of acceptance. By fully embracing what is, we create the conditions for change and growth. Now, you might be wondering, if we accept everything as it is, won't we become complacent? Won't we lose our drive for improvement and progress? This is a common misconception, but the reality is quite the opposite. True acceptance actually empowers us to act more effectively in the world. When we're caught in resistance, our perception is clouded by our desires and aversions. We see the world not as it is, but as we wish it to be. This distorted view leads to poor decisions and ineffective actions. But when we accept reality fully, we see clearly. We understand the true nature of our circumstances and can respond with wisdom and precision. Moreover, acceptance frees up the enormous amount of energy we usually spend on resistance. This liberated energy can then be channeled into constructive action, into creating the change we wish to see in our lives and in the world. But how do we cultivate this radical acceptance? It begins with mindfulness, the practice of observing our thoughts, emotions, and experiences without judgment. By developing our capacity for mindful awareness, we create a space between stimulus and response. In this space lies our power to choose our reaction, to respond with acceptance rather than knee-jerk resistance. I invite you to pause for a moment and check in with yourself. What are you resisting right now? What aspect of your reality are you struggling against? Can you feel the tension, the energy drain that comes with this resistance? Now imagine what it would feel like to fully accept this aspect of your life. Not to like it or want it, but simply to acknowledge its reality without fighting against it. Can you sense the potential for release, for a new way of engaging with your circumstances? This practice of acceptance is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. It requires patience, compassion, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. But as we develop this capacity, we find ourselves becoming more resilient, more adaptable, and paradoxically, more capable of creating positive change in our lives. The backwards law reveals to us that our conventional approaches to happiness and well-being are often counterproductive. By chasing happiness directly, we push it further away. But by embracing the full spectrum of our experience, by accepting both the light and the shadow aspects of life, we create the conditions for genuine well-being to emerge. As we conclude this part of our exploration, I encourage you to experiment with this principle in your own life. The next time you find yourself resisting an emotion, a circumstance, or an aspect of yourself, try taking a step back. Observe your resistance without judgment. Then, see if you can soften into acceptance, even just a little bit. Notice what happens. You may find that this simple shift opens up new possibilities, new ways of engaging with life that you hadn't considered before. Remember, the path to happiness is not always a straight line forward. Sometimes it requires a paradoxical step backward, a letting go of our desperate attempts to control life. In this surrender, in this radical acceptance of what is, we may find the very peace and fulfillment we've been seeking all along. The crucible of contrast, forging joy in the fires of adversity. As we continue our journey through the labyrinth of the backwards law, we arrive at a profound realization. The very elements we often view as obstacles to our happiness may, in fact, be essential ingredients in its creation. This paradox invites us to reconsider our relationship with adversity, pain, and the full spectrum of human experience. Consider for a moment the nature of contrast in our lives. We understand light because we have experienced darkness. We appreciate warmth because we have felt cold. Joy becomes meaningful in the context of sorrow. This interplay of opposites is not just a philosophical concept, it's a fundamental aspect of how we perceive and experience the world. The backwards law suggests that our attempts to eliminate negative experiences and cling only to positive ones are not only futile, but counterproductive. By trying to create a life devoid of pain, struggle, or discomfort, we inadvertently strip it of depth, meaning, and the very contrast that makes happiness recognizable. Think about the most profound moments of growth in your life. Weren't they often born from challenges, setbacks, or periods of difficulty? It's in the crucible of adversity that we forge our strength, develop our resilience, and discover depths of character we didn't know we possessed. By constantly seeking to avoid these experiences, we rob ourselves of the very catalyst for our evolution. But let's be clear, this is not an invitation to seek out suffering or to glorify pain. Rather, it's a call to shift our perspective on the inevitable challenges that life presents. Instead of viewing these difficulties as obstacles to our happiness, we can begin to see them as opportunities for growth, as contrast that gives shape and meaning to our joys. This shift in perspective has profound implications for how we approach life. Instead of constantly trying to control our external circumstances to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, we can focus on developing our internal resources to navigate the full spectrum of human experience with grace and equanimity. Imagine for a moment that you're a surfer. The goal isn't to eliminate all waves or to only surf on calm seas. The joy, the thrill, the very essence of surfing lies in learning to ride the waves, whatever their size or intensity. In the same way, the art of living isn't about eliminating all challenges, but about developing the skill to navigate them. This brings us to a crucial question. How can we cultivate this capacity to embrace both the light and shadow aspects of life? The answer lies in developing what we might call emotional agility, the ability to experience the full range of human emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Mindfulness practices play a key role here. By learning to observe our thoughts and emotions without immediately reacting to them, we create a space of freedom. In this space, we can choose our response rather than being driven by automatic reactions. We can learn to surf our emotions rather than being submerged by them. Another powerful tool is the practice of gratitude, but not the superficial kind that focuses only on the obviously positive aspects of life. True gratitude goes deeper. It involves appreciating the lessons in our struggles, finding meaning in our challenges, and recognizing the growth that comes from adversity. Consider keeping a contrast journal. Each day, note down not just the positive experiences, but also the challenges you faced. Reflect on how these difficulties have shaped you, what they've taught you, and how they've contributed to your personal growth. Over time, you may find that your perspective on adversity shifts dramatically. The backwards law also invites us to reconsider our relationship with goals and achievements. Often, we fall into the trap of thinking, I'll be happy when I achieve this goal, when I reach this milestone, when I acquire this thing. But this mindset perpetually postpones our happiness to some future point, robbing us of the joy available in the present moment. Instead, we can learn to find fulfillment in the process itself, in the journey, rather than just the destination. This doesn't mean abandoning our goals, but rather shifting our focus from the outcome to the growth and learning that occurs along the way. Ask yourself, what if the challenges you're facing right now are not obstacles to your happiness, but integral parts of your journey towards a deeper, more resilient form of well-being? How might your experience change if you embrace these difficulties as opportunities for growth rather than hindrances to be overcome? This perspective doesn't make the pain go away, but it can transform our relationship with it. It allows us to engage with life more fully, to embrace both the joys and sorrows as part of the rich tapestry of human experience. As we near the end of this part of our exploration, I invite you to reflect on the contrasts in your own life. Where have your greatest challenges led to your most significant growth? How have your darkest moments illuminated your capacity for resilience and joy? Remember, the backwards law doesn't suggest that we should seek out suffering or resign ourselves to unhappiness. Rather, it invites us to engage with life more fully, to embrace the full spectrum of human experience. In doing so, we may find that happiness isn't a destination to be reached, but a capacity to be developed. A capacity that grows stronger and deeper precisely because of, not in spite of, the challenges we face. As we move forward, let's carry with us this profound truth. It is not in the absence of difficulty that we find true happiness, but in our growing capacity to embrace life in all its complex, challenging, and beautiful forms. In this embrace, we may discover a joy that is not fleeting or fragile, but deep, resilient, and profoundly human. The paradoxical alchemy, transmuting surrender into ultimate empowerment. As we reach the culmination of our exploration into the backwards law, we arrive at a profound paradox. True empowerment often comes through surrender. This isn't the surrender of defeat or resignation, but a deep acceptance of reality that liberates us from the exhausting struggle against what is. Consider for a moment the energy we expend in resistance, resisting our emotions, our circumstances, the inevitable changes of life. This resistance, born from our desire to control, often leaves us feeling drained and disconnected. But what if we could channel this energy differently? What if, instead of fighting against the current of life, we learn to flow with it? The backwards law reveals that our conventional approaches to happiness and success often backfire. The harder we chase happiness, the more it eludes us. The more we obsess over success, the more we feel like failures. But in surrendering our desperate grasping, in letting go of our compulsive need to control outcomes, we paradoxically open ourselves to profound fulfillment and achievement. This surrender isn't passive. It's an active engagement with life on its own terms. It's about recognizing that while we can't always control external circumstances, we have immense power in shaping our responses to them. In this space of acceptance, we find clarity, creativity, and resilience. I invite you to ponder, what would your life look like if you stopped fighting against reality and instead learned to dance with it? How might your experience change if you embraced uncertainty as an adventure rather than a threat? The practice of mindfulness becomes crucial here. By cultivating present moment awareness, we create a space between stimulus and response. In this space lies our power to choose, not necessarily to change our circumstances, but to change our relationship with them. Moreover, this paradoxical approach extends beyond personal well-being. In our relationships, in our work, in our creative endeavors, when we let go of rigid expectations and open ourselves to what is, we often find that life unfolds in beautiful and unexpected ways. Remember, the backwards law doesn't negate the importance of effort or ambition. Rather, it invites us to engage with life from a place of acceptance rather than resistance, of flow rather than force. It's about aligning ourselves with the natural currents of life rather than constantly swimming against them. As we conclude our journey, I challenge you to experiment with this paradoxical wisdom in your own life. The next time you find yourself struggling against reality, pause. Take a deep breath. Can you find a way to accept what is, even if you don't like it? Can you surrender your resistance and see what unfolds? In this surrender, you may discover a profound truth, that true power lies not in controlling life, but in skillfully dancing with it. And in this dance, in this paradoxical alchemy of acceptance, you may find the very happiness and fulfillment that have eluded your grasp for so long. The backwards law reminds us that the path to a fulfilled life isn't always straightforward. Sometimes it requires us to step back, to let go, to surrender. And in that surrender, we may find ourselves more empowered, more alive, and more deeply content than we ever imagined possible.